What's up, everybody? I'm Teflon X5, and you're listening to the new Birdcage podcast. Today, we have AydinPaladin.
Hey guys, I'm AydinPaladin, Altana Volt.
The Celtic Phoenix.
I'm Remy McNeil, Celtic Phoenix. Sup?
And a friend of Aydin's, who I have not gotten a name from yet, who can now introduce themselves.
Hey, it's the mysterious Brean from Toy. That's on YouTube.
And today, we're going to be talking about horror, movies, video games, things that scare us, our deepest fears, whatever comes up in the conversation. I personally am not a specialist on horror. I've never been really good with horror, even though I have a fascination with the themes that come in with being scared and what scares people. So I'm probably going to do a lot of listening here, but I trust these three people with a ton of very unique topics, and I think I'm going to let them kick off the first little bit of conversation here. So, horror.
So I think I will take the fucking reins here, if that's okay. And I will start out by talking about Dolph Zillman, who is my academic great-grandfather in terms of the way that we as academics describe the way that, so in the way that academics work, if I learn from someone, I'm considered their child, their son or their daughter, based on, does that make sense, I guess? I'm their child if I learn from someone, because advisor-advisee relationships are familial. So I'm the academic great-grandfather of Dr. Dolph Zillman, who was and is, to this day, the primary and main researcher in the field of horror studies in terms of social psychology and media psychology. And I brought this up before, but something that I find very interesting that despite all this research that we've done and we've done again, does not represent me, is the idea that there is this sort of genetic and sort of, I guess you could call it, social presentation of how people experience horror, which is that when males watch horror films with females, if the males act very brave and strong, the females enjoy the movie more. Conversely, when the females acted very brave and strong, and this research has been conducted and reconducted over and over, so it's not just something from the 70s, this is continual research. When the females act very brave and strong, the males that they're watching the movie with don't enjoy the film. So it's sort of a question that I have to ask, I guess, that I would start this podcast with, is there some sort of societal or social presentation that we do when we watch horror films? Is there something that we are doing to, portray our braveness as humans? Because I certainly don't feel that way. And I'm a woman who bucks the narrative that Dolph Zillman and all of his subsequent research and all of the research that's been conducted in aggregate since then doesn't support. So I don't know. It's a really open question.
Interesting.
I'm not sure how to respond. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, sure is.
I mean, because like the thing that my mind immediately went to is the natural instinct of the male to protect the female.
That's that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the question of whether or not it's emasculating to a male that a female is displaying. Like, I guess the question is, how do you measure the gusto with which someone resists being scared? How do you measure that metric? Because I'll be very interested in how that study challenges.
Okay. So it was done using compatriots, which means that so basically, like, you had female participants come in and they would watch the movie with a male compatriot, meaning that the male partner was in on the study. He was a student, or he was someone who was being hired by the researcher, and he was being told to act in a certain way, and vice versa, the female in the male to female research. So it meant that they could conduct a three-pronged piece of research so that you had males either acting strong, males and females both, excuse me, either acting strong or brave in reaction to the film, indifferent or terrified. And when the females acted terrified, as I said, the males liked the film more. When the females acted terrified, these are the compatriots, these are the people who are, you know, complicit in the study. When the females acted terrified, the males enjoyed the study more.
You said the same thing twice there, I think.
Yeah. You're basically saying when the women were scared, men enjoyed it more. When the men were brave, women enjoyed it more. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have.
Yeah, it's
I do it all the time.
I do want to say I really like how our resident professor started off our discussion with with an academic study.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fenders. But it's actually it's actually a study that I find very interesting because it doesn't apply to me. Because so there was some interesting research or coming out of this study, I should say, that when a woman was watching the study, so this is the female compatriot, and she was very brave in face of the horror film, and these are slasher films that they were being shown. When she was very brave, the male participants hated the film. And so it's very interesting to me as a woman who loves horror and as a woman who watches horror all the time, to look at that and be like, oh shit, I'm really unattractive apparently. At least from my love of horror.
There's more to it though, because
certainly.
I think it would apply differently to different films. For example, arguably one of the best films of all time, not just one of the best horror films, best films, Alien, and its sequels have strong female lead protagonists that I think women could definitely project themselves onto far easier than a guy.
But according to Dolph Zillman's research, it doesn't matter about the protagonist. None of that matters because Alien was one of the films that was analyzed in this research. It didn't have anything to do with the protagonist. It just had to do with humans essentially. They were enacting what Zillman called primordial roles of gender in terms of like the male being the strong provider, the gender dynamics. So is horror a gender dynamic is the question. I don't think it is, but we can certainly discuss it.
I don't think it is. I mean, horror for me has always been something I did solitary. I didn't really care about who was near me or whatever.
But
it's always been very cerebral. Yeah, but I mean, I don't watch it with thinking I'm a dude. I watch it thinking, you know, I like scary stuff. It's more about skeletons to me than genitals and genders and all that.
The problem is that although you can say, well, this initial research was conducted in the 1970s, the fact of the matter is that the research was reconducted in the 2000s and it was confirmed to still be relevant. This is still the case where people, when they go to watch horror films, they go to watch them in tandem as a enactment of essentially reproduction, right?
I wouldn't necessarily do that. I think, I think that it's definitely a facet of it. I think looking at it through just the gender vision is necessarily it's a miss of what I think the bigger picture is, which is a communal sense. Because when I watch horror, I'm the opposite of you, Brean, where I like watching and doing horror things with other people. I enjoy that sense of community that comes with being scared together, but then at the same time, if you're with a group of people you trust, like a close group of friends, you rally with them against that thing that's happening. Especially in games, this is very relevant. Again, this is more my field. When you're playing with friends, horror games aren't scary. They're intense. That's the key to horror, is that you create that intensity of threat, and that creates a bonding experience around it. But I think that's where we get that we get a sense of community out of horror. I think that's a key part of it. Although that doesn't explain Brean and maybe even yourself, who has more solitary experiences. So that's where I would like your input on that.
All I know is that when I watch horror and when it's with my girlfriend, I'm satisfied if she's just interested in it. I don't even get into the what does she think part of it. As long as she's going to pay attention to it, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
But when you watch horror alone, what do you like? Why do you watch? Just because you like scary stuff? But like, why? Like what is the deeper implication of that?
I can't really say that it's ever been. It's just what interests me. I can't really name it. It's like, why does someone like the certain color? It's just what I've been into, and I'm sorry if that's not a satisfying answer, but I mean, I'm just painted in horror, I guess, is what I'd say.
I don't expect any different answer. I
Yeah.
think that's. I mean,
I think
as much as I would. Yeah. You go.
I think that we could have some answers in terms of what interests us in horror. All of us who are fans of horror, although Teflon isn't necessarily a fan, but for those of us who are, there is some interesting research that sort of suggests that the interest in horror is out of a interest in the unknown.
Yeah.
Because what is horror? What is terrifying? Is what we can't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So Alien is a great example, for example, a classic example of a great horror film, because it is all about something that is incomprehensible to human society, to human life. And horror in general should be, this is my opinion, should be neither shown nor told. It should all be implied. And when we just get some implications of what is very spooky, well, that's terrifying. And that's interesting to the human psyche, because we as humans are tribalistic animals, essentially. We are animals. We are always going to have this fight, flight, freeze reflex. These are our cognitive heuristics. So within our brains, there is essentially, what happens is that the way that we process information, we process stuff cognitively second. The first way that we process information is through heuristics, and heuristics are little like mental shortcuts. So for example, when I see a stick in the road, I might say, snake, snake, it's a snake, and freak out and run away, because there's this very evolutionarily based cognitive heuristic in my brain. This is sort of what horror must be based upon, is upon driving on our cognitive heuristics of our evolutionary fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say there's different types of horror, which create different types of unease, and I don't know if that necessarily lends itself always to the unknown.
Yeah.
Because a serial killer is infinitely far more understandable to our minds, and yet they are still quite scary. At least when you think about the wide-ranging implications they have.
I have no fear of serial killers. It doesn't make me scared. Maybe that's just me. So I might have a very weird.
You're right, because here's the thing. I'm not scared of them either. You're right. I think for us, and I think there's a particular section of people who enjoy a certain type of horror that we enjoy the unknown type. We enjoy the third type of horror that Stephen King defined, the type where you walk into your house.
Did you read his Playboy interview? Is that what you're talking about? Because his Playboy interview that he wrote about this was fucking brilliant.
I only know the quote. I only know the three types of horror. There's gross out horror. Is it pain horror? Is it the second one? There are three types.
It's gross out, and then it's shoot.
It's
but
someone
the final one is indescribable. Brean, do you know?
I can look it up for you.
Well, I asked you if you know, not if you can look it up.
No.
I think that might be a little bit simplistic, because we've also got. I don't think that three types is necessarily accurate, simply because of there's one kind of horror that I do kind of understand from a level, because I listened to say Crispin Freeman talk about it, because he got in a conversation about vampires versus zombies, and the horror, that the reason that zombies are supposed to be scary isn't because we're inherently afraid of death. I mean, yeah, we all are.
It's a reflection of humanity. That's what's supposed to.
It's not actually in the fact that
it's called mortality salience. Actually, there is a fear of death.
Yeah, there is, but it's the reason zombies are actually scary isn't about their semblance to man, or the way that they look, or I mean, you can make a zombie look scary, but the reason zombies are scary generally is because of hordes. It's the numbers. It's the massive amounts of
Oh,
something
okay.
Well,
that can kill you.
that falls into the second type because I just looked it up. It's the gross out, the horror, and the unknown. The gross out being kind of just about blood, guts, and decapitations, shit like that, which we've actually I think become as a society pretty immune to. We've become inoculated to it a lot.
Yeah,
But then there's
essentially.
the horror, which is the unnatural, which is I think where the hordes come into play. Things
Right.
of unusual size, things of unusual number, things that are simply just not incomprehensible, but completely out of place. And then there's the third, which is the mysterious, which is you walk into your own home and discover that everything in it has been replaced with an exact duplicate of itself and placed in their exact positions.
Oh my, that would kill. Like, that's the shit that actually scares me. It's the former two don't bother me. It's a third that actually spooks me. And so maybe I'm a little bit biased because I have a definitive sort of aspect of horror.
Like slasher films
Fucks me up.
Slasher films, like when people say, like, that's why I was questioning your study, is like, oh, they're only showing them slasher films. That's not.
Yes.
When you mentioned Alien, Alien's a little better on that front. Slasher films,
Right.
there's a tangible threat, but I treat them more as like very cheap thriller films where they rely on the gore.
Alien is good, though. Alien is better than the average. But yes, there are so many films that rely on nothing, essentially. And that is a problem. And for me, like Shiraishi Koji. And hey, Brean, you apparently fucking introduced me to Shiraishi Koji. So I didn't fucking know him before you had told me about Noroi. And I had no clue about that, but we've been friends for so long, so what the fuck ever. When I saw Noroi and when I saw it's a cult, which is very much a Lovecraft, both of which are Lovecraftian films.
Yes.
Oh, you said the magic word.
Oh, that's my shit, though. And Brean and I both agree. I think that Lovecraftian shit but my problem is that right now in 2017, in current year, this Lovecraftian thing is becoming a meme, and it's not being used as it actually should be used.
Well, it's been a meme.
They're using it's less they're using Lovecraft and more they're using Lovecraftian imagery. There's a key distinction there that people don't understand because real Lovecraft is not about the big tentacle monster that runs around.
I don't want to see anything. I want to have the visceral, I want to have intense internal just being disturbed and horrified.
Rats in the walls. Rats in the fucking walls. If you
I want to be horrified. I want to get to the point where I want to fucking throw up. That's where I want to be when I talk about Lovecraft, not like it's got a tentacle. It's a Lovecraft thing. No, I hate that shit.
Okay. With that in mind, where would you play? Like, do you dislike Dark Souls or Bloodborne? Specifically Dark Souls 3, because the previous Dark Souls didn't have any Lovecraftian theming, but Dark Souls 3 kind of brought in a little of Bloodborne.
Well, you can really beat me up over this, but I've never played a single Dark Souls game. However, I really want to play Bloodborne because Bloodborne looks really interesting to me because of its supposed Lovecraftian influence. I've seen some of the shit from it.
I think I might have a little more range in this because Dark Souls utilizes, even Dark Souls 1, actually I would argue all of Dark Souls has an undercurrent of Lovecraftian nihilism.
Oh, I'd say so. You're so weak as a character, you get wiped out.
You're weak.
It's pretty.
The only difference between Dark Souls and true Lovecraftian lore is the fact that you eventually rise to defeat these threats, and even then, entropy is still present. Like there is still one big bastard you can't beat, and that is the existence itself. And even that, Bloodborne does a great job of representing Lovecraft in video game format. It's not the best, but the idea behind what was it? I've not played it. I've watched several playthroughs though. It's clairescence or something like that, but basically insight. That's it. Insight. It's a form of currency you get for beating bosses and stuff. The more you have of it, it represents how much knowledge your character has about the world around them. And the more you have of it, the more you can actually see the weird tentacle monsters that inhabit the planet.
Right. I've
how
seen
you-
that
but also it makes the game harder because enemies do the more
But that's how
insight you
it should
have.
be.
Yeah, the more insight you have, the more damage you take. The like it's a modifier not only to your ability to observe the world around you, but for the world around you to inflict upon you.
Yeah,
But that is how it should be, honestly. Like, if you play tabletop games that are based on Lovecraftian lore, yeah, the more that you fucking know about shit, the more fucking intellect damage you take because your brain is going mad.
which is why the most terrifying thing in Lovecraft, in anything Lovecraft related, is Old Man Henderson, the man that
Yeah,
could not
Old Man
give a shit,
Henderson
does not give a shit, and
nigga.
goes right for the
Holy
fucking
shit.
throat on his military boot heelys.
Me fucking wait, what were they? His nose.
Yes, I'm Uncle Cultist. Where
Me wee men.
wee men? I swear to God, I want to play him in a movie because like they described him wearing combat boots,
Hawaiian
cargo
t-shirt.
pants, a Hawaiian t-shirt, and a white t-shirt underneath. And his hair was spiked in a faux hawk. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I literally wear all that except for the mohawk. I wear all that constantly. So
But do
I'm
you
just
have any? But do you have any wee men?
I have a stuffed rabbit.
Well, that's basically a wee man. What if the cultists take your wee man? What are you going to do? Are you going to grab? You going to grab your shotgun?
It's a drive up into my fucking car that has a broken radio.
I feel like the other people in this call don't know this story.
Oh, yeah. Okay. After this call, let us introduce you to the wonderful story of Old Man Henderson. It is a ride.
It's truly one of the best D&D or role playing stories ever written.
Yeah. But back on point, the more you know about anything in Bloodborne, the more it hurts you. And that is what Lovecraft is. The more you know, basically it's the opposite of G.I. Joe. The more you know, the more you're fucked.
Like, I want to take it back to Shiraishi Koji's movie, Occult. And Brean, you know this movie I'm talking about, right? Where it's like is a documentary or a mockumentary.
Yeah.
Not Karuto, not cult, but occult. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there is a difference. Okay.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
So in Occult, it's the crazy guy. And it's basically like the course of the documentarian finding out more and more about the shit that the crazy guy is seeing. And at first, of course, it's displayed as absurdity, but it becomes more and more clear that it's reality, or at least his reality, or the shit that he's fucking seen. And in the end, of course, he spoiler, I guess, but conducts a terrorist attack, and because of this. And
one of the worst endings compared to the rest of the movie.
Is.
It just got completely stupid.
Yeah, it really was a disappointment. But the idea is that this is the kind of thing where it's like also the creator of the film, as he's watching it, as he gets more and more involved in this Lovecraftian shit, he becomes complicit.
Yeah, well, that was great because usually in the documentary style movie, they are separate from it. It's kind of like a man bites dog. Twist,
right. And that was what was so cool about that movie, is that it's what typically happens is that when you become involved in a cult, or even when you become involved in a really strange thing like this shit that's happening in the Shiraishi Koji film, they become complicit in the cult or in the idea. And in that case, it's the idea of blowing shit up to create, what was the idea again? To create a portal to bring in tentacle monsters or whatever.
It took the very
movie,
basic, Dude, it took that very basic idea and it went to an extreme. It was the last 5 minutes, like I would just cut out of the movie if I was going to show it to someone. To be honest, I totally didn't get it. I didn't think it had a place.
You would cut out the last, maybe
like the very last minute. The last 5 minutes was great, but then I can't explain.
You don't like the part where he's screaming when a bunch of worms are riding all around him and he says, it's hell, I'm in hell. I love that bit, though. I love how cheesy it was. It's hell, I'm in hell. I love that. Maybe that's just
I
me.
wish I knew what you guys were on right now.
Watch
Yeah.
this film. It's great.
It'll be indelible. It'll leave an imprint on you if you watch it,
All right.
for good or for
You guys
worse.
think you can talk about that for the next 5 minutes? Because my cats are getting hungry. I need to go feed them. I can be right back.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's-
we're
that's
waiting
some
for
true
our other horror aficionado, but
What's
so
this
we
film?
can. It's called Occult. The problem is that Shirai Shikoji, who is a Japanese horror director, has made 2 films that are technically called Occult. He's made one that's called Occult and one that's called Karuto. Now, when you translate that from Japanese katakana into English, that spells cult. So he has 2 films called Cult, but the one we're talking about is the one that's called Occult,
From
which is
2009.
which
Yes,
is
2009.
it is a Lovecraftian film.
Okay.
And the Karuto one is also a Lovecraftian film. The one that is more recent, 2012 or 13, I believe. That one's also Lovecraftian.
He's kind of like the cinematic Junji Ito.
Yes. He's essentially Junji Ito of
For
cinema,
Japanese cinema.
He's great. He's my favorite director. I've loved him for years. And you actually what film did you turn me on to now? Forgetting. Oh, you turned me on to
Asking me?
Noroi. Yeah, Brean, you turned me on to Noroi, which I had no clue about before you told me. And that was like back in what, like 2009 or something?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was a long time ago. But like you turned me on to that shit, and I realized, oh my god, Shirai Shikoji is making my Lovecraft movies I always wanted. As much as we can get, because Mountains of Madness is never going to be made.
Yeah. Which might be a good thing, because, it really...
They'll ruin it if they made it. They would ruin it.
Oh boy.
There's another Lovecraftian movie that just came out. Well, it's probably going to be more of the visual one from what I've seen, but it's The Void.
Oh, I heard about that. Is that any good?
Yeah.
It is?
It's out in certain pirate bays if you ever want to, sail by it and check it out.
Is it any good though? Is it an actual Lovecraft movie?
I've heard it's a fun movie, but it's not like a
So you don't know.
good one. Like, yeah, I'm gonna watch
Wow.
it. I want you to watch it too, and then we'll review
Well, why
it.
don't we can watch it together and review it? That would be cool. My issue is though that or not my issue. My fear is that it's not possible for any Lovecraft movie to really be made because Lovecraft is all about the environment and the experience and the visceral.
A lot of what made Lovecraft fantastic is his writing.
Yes.
This is coming from someone who has a degree in English. I don't know. What kind of degree is
Oh
you?
boy!
You have a degree in English?
Oh hell no!
I'm just curious, because I don't want to sound like I'm touting it. I didn't mean that came off really condescending. I didn't want to. I just I both love and hate Lovecraft's writing.
Yeah.
Because at one point it is infinitely descriptive. His mastery over English is I would even put him on par with Shakespeare with just how bizarrely accurate he is in the way he describes these abstract
He's more in line
concepts.
with Poe. His general influence was Poe, and you can see that very much in his writing.
Nantucket, The Adventure of
Yeah.
Because I actually did a comparison between Nantucket and of Madness for my thesis paper.
Neat.
And
That's
so,
really cool.
Yeah. It's also because the teacher never read either of them. So I could have said whatever I wanted, but his mastery of the word is key to creating the environment, and it also the modern Lovecraft did by hope, and because traditional Lovecraft is sort of a defeatist narrative. But like acceptance, it's an acceptance narrative.
Yes, acceptance is the point, and that's the entire point of every single one of his narratives is that the end of humanity is inevitable. We must accept this.
This actually ties back a little bit to what I was saying about Dark Souls earlier, and I guess that that does carry on through all of Dark Souls. Is that the main theme is that the age of fire, the age of man, will come to an end.
the age of man is done, and that is the entire thesis of Lovecraft, is that the entire idea. So Lovecraft, as much as you want to call him a racist or whatever, his entire theme was that man, be he white or whatever, would eventually come to an end, and that's what's interesting.
Interject here about Dark Souls is that it's actually the opposite of what you think.
Oh, please tell me, because I don't know.
The Dark Souls is the end of the age of the gods. It is the end of the age of higher beings. If you choose the darkness ending, which snuffs out the flame, it is it is man taking back the world. Because the darkness and humanity go hand in hand in that series. It's really complicated stuff. The lore is so obscure.
This is super fucking interesting to me. I have no clue about any of this.
That's partially true, but actually, like, the thing is, Rain,
you never get to see the world after that, though. That's the thing. Is like you.
Well,
the idea is that it's cyclical. It doesn't matter. Like in the end, the reign of man will end, and the reign of fire will begin again.
Right. Well, the thing is that I think like you're right, but I feel like you're also wrong, because the only reason man persists currently in the age of fire is because there's fire. When the fire goes out,
but who created fire?
No one knows. It just showed up one day. I mean, quite literally, it just showed up one day, and the gods were like, "Hey, this is awesome, sweet."
So with Dark Souls, what happened was, in the beginning there was no light. It was everything was gray, and the dragons ruled the world. And
we don't have time for this. I'm just gonna pull up this video, and you guys can watch it later if I can find it.
Good, because I don't see. Here's the thing. Maybe real. I am interested in Dark Souls because of its lore, but the idea that it's a game that's super hard just to be brutal doesn't interest me. And this is someone who loves Devil May Cry. Well, I'm sort of like, the game is hard just to be hard.
That's not actually what's going on. Like,
please explain it, because I don't know.
Miyazaki never had the intention of making the game hard for the sake of being hard. It was simply that was the design choice. That ended up being the design choice, is that the game ended up being hard as a circumstance of the game mechanics and the bosses and the way things were designed. The second game technically was the one that they made hard for the sake of being hard. And they failed at it too, because apparently, according to most people, the second game was a lot easier than the first game. But it wasn't that Dark Souls was ever hard for the sake of being hard. It's just that was the design mechanic.
Okay.
I would certainly. I never got into I didn't get into Dark Souls until I played. This was because PlayStation Plus on the PlayStation 3. One of the first games that came free was Demon's Souls, which was the precursor
the first
to Dark
one.
Souls.
Yeah. No, trust me, I own every game pretty much on Steam that's been.
Praise yourself of this fine video.
Okay, all right.
We can do that later. You can watch that later. It's fantastic. It's great. Continue.
But
sorry.
I own pretty much every game that's been released on PC. The problem is I just have this fear that it's not a fear. It's more like, okay, when I want to play a horror game, my goal there is that I don't want it to be necessarily based on clicky skill. Dark Souls and Demon Souls or whatever, to me, and I can be completely wrong on this is based on my interpretation, is based on being very able to get used to a set of rules. And I guess that's true for any horror game, but when I play Silent Hill 2 or 3 or 4, even though it's going to require me to follow a set of rules, those set of rules are more puzzle based. And that's just as Fatal Frame. That's the kind of game I want to play when I look at a horror game. And that's just me. Whatever.
Right.
That's fine. But I mean, like,
that's absolutely fine. Fucking Dark Souls isn't actually a horror game, so it doesn't fall into this kind of category. It is more of a skill based game.
Oh, it looks like a real
actually-
Lovecraft-based series for
it's
sure.
an action game, but it's an action game so bathed in traditional horrific imagery. Like it takes all the stuff in the fairy tales of yore, dragons and knights and all that, and it really puts it in a pseudo. I don't want to say realistic, but like it drags what real horror comes from these kind of images. It makes like here's the thing. Before this, dragons to me always seem kind of like pushovers in fantasy. Smog, fucking pushover. I don't care. He burned down a village. Dark Souls made me scared of fucking dragons.
Let me put it this way. Plague of Grapes, if you guys have heard of him, he's a YouTuber.
That's literally who I just linked you to.
Oh, did you? Okay, whoops.
His summary of Dark Souls.
His summary of Dark Souls, but his summary of horror that he did was very accurate, and actually more accurate than any of the research that we currently have on horror, in terms of my opinion. Unfortunately, okay. Oh, shoot. Okay, as a little bit of an aside, my advisors want me to be the new horror god. They want me to be the new person who studies horror. And considering that, as I said, my great-grandfather, academically speaking, was the person who invented the study of horror. And so when I look at shit like what Plague of Grapes posted, I can only think, holy shit, this is completely correct. We need to have data that supports this issue. What Plague of Grapes said, essentially, though, was that horror is something, true horror is seeing something that you can't totally comprehend. When you are faced with something that confuses your brain to the point where and this makes very much sense from a psychological level. When you see something that your brain can't understand, and it could be a mixture of a spider and a fish or whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as it's something your brain is struggling to understand, that is true horror. To be truly disconcerted, to be truly complexed by what you are looking at, that is horror.
Confusion is horror.
Yeah.
Not completely, but yes, confusion is a major part of it.
See, I've always felt like horror is not necessarily confusion, or that feeling of perplexing. Because being perplexed isn't necessary. Like it can incite panic in me.
In terms of how our brains work, that perplexity, that is going to incite horror in terms of how our actual brains work. So in terms of like, now it might not be scary for everybody, but in terms of how our minds work, yes, that is horrifying.
Well, can we at least all agree that the best horror game of all time is Mass Effect Andromeda at this point?
Well, it certainly is for me.
Yes, I'm trying to find it. Did you see the gif of the lady in the chair? Like she's like being all smug, like Arya from Afterlife, and like it's her leaning onto her arm.
But they've patched it. They patched it today, so that now it's less creepy.
On one hand, I'm happy, but on the other hand,
I'm unhappy. I don't want them to patch. I just want them to leave it at the terrifying state that it was at, because that was really funny.
To be fair, I still wanted Andromeda to be good, but I've not played it yet, and I'm probably not going to buy it for some time.
I'm not going to buy it if I can avoid it. So I wanted to say, horror for me. So it's really hard. This is the reason it's hard for me to get into horror games and sometimes horror movies, is because getting into horror games requires immersing yourself. You got to put on some headphones. You got to turn off the lights. You immerse yourself into the world, and for me, that causes panic. And the reason that isn't because, oh, I'm about to go up against the horrors of this universe. No, what it is for me is I am deathly afraid of loneliness.
Oh, I get that. But that's for me, I guess that's very much, I'm also deathly afraid of loneliness. But I think for me, the fear, and I don't know if Brean's still here. Brean, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Do you feel this way, man? Like the fear of loneliness, the fear of abject solemnity is almost I guess you could call it a vaccine to the actual fear of, or the reality of being lonely. Because when you can kind of vaccinate yourself through horror, actual fear or actual loneliness is less powerful.
So it's an escape.
Yeah, because you're allowing yourself to accept loneliness, you're allowing yourself to accept solemnity, and as such you can kind of brace yourself for it.
It's kind of interesting because you're bringing up themes that I remember from a Twilight Zone episode, Time Enough at Last.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorites. It's one of my dad's favorites. But you all know the premise, and for those who don't know the premise, why does it say my mic? No, my mic isn't good. The premise is basically a man accidentally survives a nuclear holocaust of the world.
A great episode.
Yeah, he survives it by being in a bank vault by accident. He accidentally locked himself in, and he survived. And at the very end of the episode,
my glasses.
He wanted to be alone and read. That was his entire character arc before the bombs went off. And afterwards, he was alone and tried to read, and then he broke his glasses. And so that's the entire irony of it, is he has a library full of books and Time Enough at Last, but he cannot read. So, like, the idea of loneliness, like that's the image that comes to mind, as being completely in a desolate place and lonely.
Right.
And that's never been a factor for me when it comes to it does actually. You're right. I'm not self-analyzing right, because I was observing earlier that I like doing horror things in a group.
Yeah.
Maybe acknowledging that I'm not alone.
The thing for me is like, and it gets to me on a psychological level myself, because I have. I've probably mentioned this on my channel at some point, but I have abandonment issues. My father left when I was 2, and being lonely causes some existential problems. For example, I don't even have to be entirely alone. I was brought a long time ago. I was streaming Amnesia: The Dark Descent for a friend. And what ended up happening is I was immersed in the game, and I knew I was being watched. I knew that somebody was there for me. But what ended up happening is I got enveloped in that feeling of loneliness and being pursued by something horrifying, and I ended up having an anxiety attack. I stopped being able to play the game. I collapsed. I started having problems. So for me, horror comes absolutely from a feeling of being alone, of being solitary, and just having other things around to scare me makes it worse. So this is why I've never really gotten into like classic horror games or horror movies, is because I have to have someone there with me, or it might hurt me.
It's kind of weird, because for me, horror is personally about powerlessness, and that is one reason I hate a lot of modern horror games. Is they're following Amnesia's design choice, which is where you go in and you're not armed at all. You have no way to defend yourself. Your character isn't even given the option of punching at someone. You just cannot physically attack your opponent, and it feels like your arms are tied to your side. And I hate that feeling. And I hate those games for it. I recognize it's a great way to create horror, but it feels artificial and cheap to me. I think
you're correct, but I would disagree in that, yes, if it's just being used as an artificial way to create horror, yeah, it's terrible. But it can be used as a correct and accurate way to create horror if it's used correctly. The original Amnesia, the original Penumbra games, they use that correctly. The problem is that now it's being...
You can fight in. There is combat mechanics in Penumbra, as I recall.
So, in Penumbra?
Admittedly, I'm only going off Yahtzee's review, because Yahtzee specifically pointed out that in Penumbra, you could use like the environment to fight back. Like you could actually.
Oh, kind of, but it's
it was very finicky. You mentioned it was very, very finicky. So
it's very, very, very limited in order to be able to fight back in Penumbra, which is, of course, if people don't know, the games that were made by the same company before they made Amnesia. Penumbra, though, no, you really can't. It is the same game as Amnesia in terms of you really can't. You can if you try to finick your shit enough, you can fight back. But
Like
generally
throwing
speaking,
jerky.
yeah, generally speaking, it's a game where you really can't fight back. And it was the first game of that type, and I loved that shit because it also reminded me of earlier Silent Hill games and Fatal Frame, and Clock Tower, where maybe you can fight back, but you're not really going to get the extent of fighting back as you would in a game like Resident Evil.
Well, here's the thing. In the original Silent Hills, and admittedly, I've only played through Silent Hill 2, this is personal, and admittedly, I grudgingly admit it was on the Xbox 360 version, so there were some slight changes that might have made it less scary. But when you're fighting the monsters, it's less about fighting the monsters and more about experiencing the town.
Exactly, though. That's what I want. That's what I
acknowledge that Amnesia is a good game. Like Amnesia is a great game. I just hate that every horror game for like the last 5 or 6 years recently has been copying the same damn formula of arms tied to the side, you can't fight back. Even Outlast, which I thought was going to have some kind of combat mechanic.
Yeah.
Really, your character does kick people off of him, but it feels... I'm going to say that I'm very happy Resident Evil 7 brought back guns, because holy shit, I need a horror game where I can shoot something. Even if it does nothing, I need to feel like I have something to empower me, or else I'm not going to be able to play.
So I'm gonna bring up a "Hey Ash, what you playing" video, which is, I know, what a horror. She's related to Anthony Birch, and he's the massive cuck that he is. He is certainly a massive cuck. But I will say this, which is that in terms of her review of Fear 2, I believe, is that when you're a gun-toting madman who has ultimate access to all kinds of weapons, how can you be afraid of anything? Like, even in Doom, I can, it's maybe spooky for a second because I'm not expecting it, but it's not going to be ultimately scary. To be terrified, to be scared is a loss of self-reliance, essentially, isn't it?
A loss of control.
Yes. Well, here's the thing, and this is why I find it irritating about so many games taking away your option to fight, is that it doesn't represent losing the option to fight.
It'd be better if it was like Breath of the Wild, where you can fight, but if you're not prepared, you're going to get your ass kicked.
Yes,
I like that sort of thing.
That's why the new Resident Evil is so good, is because it's all about conserving ammunition. It's all about keeping an eye on your supplies, because the minute you run out is the minute you're dead. It's the minute that these fucking things are just going to overwhelm you and bowl you over. Now, admittedly, Resident Evil 7 does have a lot of its own problems, like repetitive enemies and such, but the fact that it garnered such critical acclaim makes me so happy. I want games where you can feel empowered for that scant moment that you need to, and then have the rug pulled out from under you, and so you're a panicking, running, complete mess, crying all the way home to mommy because someone broke your toys, and now they're trying to rip your head off.
Yeah.
Right. Personal rant there.
Yeah, I think it'll go back that way. It's there's always an ebb and a flow with these things. They have their new toy they love, and it'll go back to the way it was.
I'm just very scared. I'm hoping they just don't go Resident Evil 6. I hope no one ever goes Resident Evil 6 ever again. Fuck Resident Evil 6.
I can't agree with you, but that's.
I know how wrong you are.
It's not horror, but it's still good science fiction. So.
We can debate that, believe me.
Personally, for me, I'm listening to you guys. I know I'm not interjecting that much, but I'm just thinking, for me, horror isn't necessarily the unknown and all these other things. It's for me, horror is certainty, and it's knowing something is going to happen, and it's knowing that there's nothing you can do about it. Because for me personally, the thing that keeps me up at night, or it wakes me up at night for my dreams, and I feel vulnerable at those times, is when I realize that at some point I'm going to go through the process of dying, and that I am going to cease to be, and perhaps there's something else after that point. But I do know that for most purposes, I'm not going to be here anymore. And it worries me, because I'm wondering if all the things that I've ever done, all the things I've ever thought, all the little worlds that are inside each and every little thought I've ever had are just going to disappear and never be expressed again. And at that point, what am I if I'm anything? Because I'm not going to be here forever. I'm impermanent. And it's entropy.
It's
I guess that's what gets to me.
Say that because it's weird that you say that, because I mean, while horror is about powerlessness, to me, I also have to remember that my favorite horror film of all time, my personal favorite horror film of all time, and should be arguably the best horror film of all time, I will stand by it, is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
And
a great film.
and
Fucking
that one,
great movie.
That one relies, like that one's not about powerlessness, because the heroes kill the thing pretty damn effectively. They blow it up at the end. They blow up the entire damn station.
Well,
but
we're not sure if the heroes are the heroes, because half of them could be the thing.
It plays on paranoia. So
Yeah.
how does your idea of entropy play into that? How does my idea of powerlessness play into that? Is there something else somewhere else that makes that scarier?
Well, it's that's actually, both of those play into it. It's not just powerlessness or of entropy. What really drives horror, and not necessarily actually even in a Lovecraftian sense, it's not just the powerlessness or the entropy, but the combination, the loss of power. I think that horror is at its strongest when you have power, when power is there, when you have the ability to do something, but that ability is stripped away from you.
Well, I mean, like traditionally, I have no mouth and I must scream.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I think, the best way to describe how I think the most horrific image in the world can be. Is
Right.
I have no mouth and I must scream.
But I think because in Lovecraftian horror, the ability the stripping of power from you comes from knowledge. You become knowledgeable about these things that you are incapable of moving or of accessing, or you become knowledgeable about the eldest gods that will destroy or make mad the entire world. And your power to resist those things is stripped, not because you had it in the first place, but because your knowledge of that power, or that your knowledge of powerlessness has come to fruition. But I think that and that's kind of, Bloodborne is even more brilliant in that aspect, because is my microphone fucking up?
It sounds like it to me, but I don't know about anyone else.
It sounds scratchy.
Okay, yeah, it might be. Hold on a second. I'm gonna refresh.
Like, we can understand you. You're not losing anything, but it doesn't sound the best. Oh, and by the way, the Thing, if you want to read something that goes well with The Thing, there's a short story called The Things by Peter Watts. It was a short story written in 2010, I believe, and it's from the perspective of the monster or the alien. And it describes, it describes basically what it's doing and how it sees the world, and it's really abstract, really out there, but it's really, really good.
What is it by again?
Peter Watts. It's called The Things. It's as in the Thing is watching the humans, and it calls them the Things. And it's actually a great story, because the Thing is sad for humans because they can't commune with nature like it can, because it can just symbiotically inhabit somebody, imitate them perfectly, understand everything about them.
On one hand, that sounds really interesting, but on the other hand, it's part of the horror that comes with the Thing is not knowing what the Thing is. And I know you say it's abstract, but just knowing that it has a perspective is I think too much information. I'll still read it. I think it's a good suggestion. I'm still going to read it because I'm interested. But I think it might divulge into like an alternate universe type mentality where one is the canon and the short story is just some kind of fun what if.
Yeah, it's a what if, but it's an interesting one, and I think it actually adds to it because when you're watching the movie again, you're thinking, well, this creature just really wants to survive, and are we any better than it? Because we want to survive too, and it's a clash.
Yeah, it's perfectly. I mean, when you think about it, that it's just a reversal of predator-prey relationship because we're typically the predator and they usually have prey, and now instead it's the other way around. That's how every good horror is. Yeah. At least when it comes to a physical threat. When it comes to an abstract threat, we're more concerned about taxes or the implications of murdering our loved ones. Your picture has like two little eyes in the background. Is that intentional or is that just like lights in the background? Because
that it's a little happy accident, but that's just two lights in the background. I stood in front of a projector and I had an image projected on my screen, so I'm blinding myself in that picture. But I wanted to do a selfie that wasn't, a selfie. I wanted to do something interesting.
Well, it looks like you're about to be eaten by a werewolf.
Yeah.
You've been kind of quiet.
I wonder if he's working on his mic.
I mean, Aiden, not Tef. Aiden.
Oh yeah. I don't know where she went.
Aiden, did I talk over you too much? Did I make you a sad? I do that sometimes. I feel guilty because I have a very boisterous personality and attitude and voice.
Yeah.
I just naturally talk over people because of my family, and I feel bad about that, but I can't help it. Ugh.
No, it's okay. I've actually got a collection of Lovecraft stuff I've been putting together over the last few years, and it's got 253 movies in it. I haven't watched all of them, but I've read about all of them.
I'm more knowledgeable on the books. It's been a long time since I've read most of them. But I get good refreshers and good little summaries from the graphic novel anthology, and those are some pretty good ones.
There's a bunch of comics out there. They go all the way back through EC up till now. I've got those two. I'm meaning to put it out there someday, but I'm still working on it. But I was going to make a suggestion of some good Lovecraftian movies that really capture the feeling and what we were talking about, the true essence.
I think The Thing is one of them.
Yeah, The Thing is one of them, definitely.
Considering it was starting out as a Mountains of Madness inspired piece. At least the original novel was inspired by No, we cannot hear you, Tef. Oh, that's cute. Because there's a little speech bubble.
No, we can't.
Yeah, we can't hear you, buddy. Sorry.
And Aiden's gone. Maybe this is horror. Maybe everyone's gonna start disappearing, and it'll be just one person going, "Guys, where are you?" And then it cuts out.
They're gonna be that movie. It came out a few years ago, where it was all these kids doing a Skype call together, and then they're slowly killed by the ghosts of someone they got killed.
I'm gonna get you or something like that.
Yeah. No, it was Unfriended. I think it was like Unfriended or something like that.
Yeah.
That was a horrifying premise, but I'm not personally a fan of locked room situations. The original Saw did that pretty well. I'm not a fan of Saw by any
I'm not.
I'm not a fan of torture porn. I should say that. I'm a fan of Saw in that it has a lot of really cool machinations going on.
Mm-hmm.
Thought so. Thanks, Tef. Why can't we hear you? Was the cat doing something? I'm gonna go check on the cat. There's some noises I don't like.
Well, I guess while we're waiting, I'm going to avoid the dead air, and I'll just go ahead and list some of the Lovecraftian movies I like. There's The Stone Tape, and that is a 1970s British movie about researchers who go to a haunted castle and they have a special recording device that will be able to capture the ghosts. And what's interesting about this one is that eventually, I'm not going to go too far into it, but they start recording things that are going back further and further in time. So they go from, say, a modern ghost to a medieval ghost, and then a caveman ghost, and then it goes on from there. And it's very interesting where it goes to. It's
list them in the chat while you're working on this, while you're saying them, so we have a list we can reference back to.
Yeah.
So
I'm actually typing it right now.
Oh, good. The what was it? I just had in my mind another Lovecraftian piece. Oh no, another Lovecraftian point that really pissed me off, and it still pisses me off. Have you noticed that everything that's vaguely Lovecraftian themed just copies Shadows over Innsmouth?
Yeah, well, that had a lot of evocative imagery in it. Hey,
hey,
we can hear you.
Jeff.
Yeah, you sound much better.
It was the left line. God, that joke fell flat. No, I don't remember what your.
No, I don't.
Fuck.
Fuck. Okay, what are you doing, cats? What are you doing?
Yeah, mine are running around here too. I just ignore them.
Shit. See, I've been trying to work on getting my mic back.
Yeah.
So long that I wasn't even listening to what you guys were saying at this point.
That's okay. I tried to fill it in with material you could use if you need to merge it into something.
The cat was playing with his mouse and it has a little rattler in it. That's what it was.
Yeah, my cats have awful toys. They have and I've confiscated all of them, but my girlfriend keeps getting them. The electronic ones that make noises. I don't know what the purpose of that is.
I thought he said, "Oh, my cats have terrible toys." My cat was running around with this mace and just smashing every vase in the house.
They have a fish. It sounds like a squirrel having a seizure. I don't know what that thing is, but it's gone.
No, Shadow over. It just ticks me off that Shadows over Innsmouth becomes like the de facto. I know it's like one of the most popular stories, but I mean, come on. There's so many others to choose from. You've got I'm forgetting the names of them. I've already said Rats on the Walls. You've got, of course, the classical Call of Cthulhu. You've got Mountains of Madness. You've got Dagon, all of which are very unique stories that end in very unique ways and have different unique approaches. And yet everyone goes back to Shadow over Innsmouth. It's like you got to start a story that way. It ticks me off.
Yeah.
I think I was still like on a minor rant about loss of control being the primary function of horror.
Yes.
I think I just don't remember where I was in that. I mean, because shit. Because that's kind of like a the thing is, like, things that are scary generally, like, it doesn't matter if a game is if a game has a death element, it can be scary. We don't always consider it horror, but no matter what game it is, if there is an element that takes away control from the player, it kind of brings on an a feeling of existential dread. With it, because you're always going to be in fear of losing that control briefly. Not only in some cases you'll lose progress, but you also do not have the control with which to push your character forward any longer. Shit, I just kind of fuck. I hate that I blanked.
It's fine. I mean, technical difficulties and just natural human inclination to forget shit. It happens.
Yeah, I've never made a video that hasn't had a technical glitch in it, so You know, it's
Maybe
all
that's
right.
your fault. You're to blame for everything that went wrong today.
It
I'm
happens,
the
all,
chase.
happens all the time here. I might be a technological genius capable of creating artificial intelligences, but man, nothing likes to work around me.
The I'm trying to think of like, oh god, I had an idea that I can't remember. Fuck, it's contagious.
Would you like to? You were talking about better Lovecraft stuff that was more.
Well, yeah, it was a
deserving.
while before that actually, but it like
Okay.
I remember it was somehow like it was horror related, like horror elements in something else, like in other mediums, it being utilized in other genres, like like horror elements in movies that aren't horror movies. I'm trying to think of a couple of good ones because I know there are some like just honest what the fuck moments, but I can't for the life of me recall any of them. Like damn it, where's Aiden?
I'm trying to contact her. She's not talking. Maybe her internet dropped out or something.
Maybe she's dead, coming to haunt us.
Oh no!
Might have walked away from the computer for a bit.
Aiden, she just blinked on.
Hello.
She's watching. I know she is.
Probably desperately trying to get back on.
Might be. Something might have pulled her away from the computer for a while.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about let's like a because there's something that Aiden said that you, Brean, were particularly knowledgeable about. Why don't we talk a little bit about Japanese horror and maybe the way it differentiates from Western horror?
Sure.
Can I at least insert my favorite quote from Yahtzee and where it differentiates, because I think it is relevant.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Where Western horror is a man chasing you around with a chainsaw, Japanese horror is being locked in a room with a spirit that absolutely hates your existence and wants to kill you, but neither of you can leave, and you both hate each other.
Huh.
How accurate would you say that is?
That is true, because there's a preponderance of Asian horror that is just ghost stuff. It's all ghost stuff. It's all ghost stuff on the way down.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the actual ghost stuff, but I like samurai dramas with ghosts in them. Those are some good ones. They have a lot of those, and those are more prominent back in the 60s. They had a lot of good ones.
Right.
Well, I mean, like if
there's
Kurosawa back
there's
then.
very few. Yeah. Kurosawa even edged into horror in some places.
Kurosawa version of Macbeth. What was it called? Was it Ronin? No, it wasn't Ronin. It was.
No, it was Kagemusha.
Are you sure it was Kagemusha? I thought it was like a one-word story. I swear to God.
That's the one I think of when I think it's not. It's Throne of Blood.
So like I want to say the only real Japanese horror I have watched is Ring and The Grudge. Those are my exposure to Japanese horror and Japanese horror video games, but those kind of like bring in Western elements.
Yeah.
Like they bring in some Western shit, but also kind of retain a little bit of traditional Japanese horror here and there.
Right. A lot of the Japanese horrors was originally centered on their monsters, the Mononoke, and there's a few of those movies in the 60s I like a lot where they're basically morality tales and you're haunted by a ghost that is benevolent to everyone else, but for you it's gonna screw your day up. And those are good movies, but mostly, like I said, Asian horror movies, it's all about ghosts. It's about family, your history coming back to haunt you. Family curses are a big thing. It's a lot to do with that. And it is the quote you said was very accurate. We're a lot more physical, and it's always an alien or something unknown in Western horror that's going after you. And I guess that plays into the whole, communism, Red Scare kind of mental mindset. Whereas in Asia, you're very much in the family unit and you're trying to please everyone around you and you're trying to be part of the team. And their horror reflects that a lot.
Well, you meant like the movie The Host from Korea.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just this evil force that just shows up and fucks with everything.
And there's actually very few Japanese movies that are just slasher films. There's maybe 2.
What was the one with the Audition? Audition.
Yeah, Audition was a good one.
I've only seen one scene from Audition. I just know I never want to ever see Audition ever again.
You should watch it.
Are you familiar with Audition, Tef?
I am not. All
right. So the premise is, I can't even adequately describe it. It's just horrifying, and it's the most horrifying thing because it's plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of weird where some horror is more terrifying because it's surreal, and then there's other horror that's more terrifying because it is so real.
Right.
The Audition 1999 film?
Yeah,
I think it is.
By Takashi Miike.
Got it.
Oh, did he do something else recently that I recall? Takashi Miike?
He's done a bunch. He's done a bunch of things.
Is he the one that directed? He is, isn't he? He's the one that directed the Phoenix Wright movie.
It's possible. Yeah.
Let me look.
Holy shit!
Yeah, he actually did. Yeah, he's done tons of movies. He's very prolific over in Japan.
He's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamond is Unbreakable. That's coming up.
He's famous for Itchy the Killer, Audition.
He's a man that I know. I know very little about Japanese filmmakers, and I probably should know more about them. I should probably know more about anime studios at this point.
Well, I can give you some guys to look up if you want to see some good Japanese horror or just Japanese weird movies. That's kind of my thing for a while there.
Japanese weird movies. I can also have you ever heard of Mawaru Penguin Drum? Because I was going to suggest this. This is what I was going to suggest. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Mawaru Penguin Drum?
No.
It's weird. It's an anime that I can't adequately describe, but it sounds very much like the movie Occult that you described.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
In the way that you're not sure if what is happening is actually happening. And the best part about it is the very first episodes of lighthearted. And I've watched this director before. He's the one that did this show called Yuri Kuma Arashi, which literally translates to Lesbian Bear Hurricane. And it's one of my favorite anime of all time because it's symbolically all about the persecution of homosexuals in Japanese society.
That's actually one of the movies I'll suggest plays on that theme.
So that's what Yorikuma Arashi is about. Whereas where I want to say that Mawaru Penguin Drum is all about orphans and being an orphan. But in that, it has such interesting abstract imagery, some of the weirdest shit that you're not sure if it's happening or not, that, well, it's not directly scary. It's so unnerving and off-putting that I can't help but classify it in some way, at least in some small way, as a horror series. It's like that point of uncanny valley of just, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly suggest. Let me type it in the chat so you know.
Yeah, do it. I'm gonna look it up. All right, I'm gonna list some of the directors and maybe specific movies you guys should check out for sure. Okay, this one is pretty well known. It's called House or Hausu. It's by Nobuhiko Obayashi, and it's about a haunted house movie, and it was made because they wanted to do a Japanese version of Jaws, and they ended up with a haunted house movie about a cat that sprays blood from its mouth. So, that's how it ended up that way. It's
house show. Look on its wiki page. It's just like perfect.
Yeah, it's called House 1977. It's a wonderful movie. It's pretty well known. But the visual imagery in that, the director himself, Obayashi, he's known for his visual panache. He has a very interesting way of making movies where they're not just interesting for the subject material. The way he does it is interesting. And he actually did commercials, and even those are interesting to watch because they're just so visual and it's psychedelic. It's psychedelic to the max.
Right.
I would suggest that. That's a great one to start on. It's very, if you want to watch it with a group of friends, it's perfect. It's the perfect crazy movie. There's not a scene in it that's just not absolutely wild.
I just love that image of the little white cat surrounded by hellfire. That's perfect.
Yep, that's the evil cat. And that gets back to what I was talking about with Asian people and Asian cinema and how they're just obsessed with ghosts. But it's a very good one. It's not heavy-handed at all. Another one I would suggest, one of my favorites, is Shinya Tsukamoto. He did Tetsuo the Iron Man. And that is a movie about a guy who gets cut by a metal fetishist. And he starts developing growths of metal in his body. And eventually he becomes like a metal freak. And he has to find Tetsuo, the original Iron Man, and do battle with him. And it goes from there. Again, it's a very visually interesting movie. It's also pretty popular. I'm sure some people have heard of it. They're listening to this.
It's got 77% on the Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's generally well regarded. It's a very independent indie film. It's from the 80s. I recommend it. I've seen all the sequels. There's 2 sequels, and then there's, I think, 2 proto films that were made, or maybe 1 before, kind of like how Evil Dead has Within the Woods, and then there's Evil Dead, then there's Evil Dead 2 and 3. It's kind of the same progression.
Yeah,
where you see the director just getting more and more talent and money accumulated.
That's what I'm hoping happens to me, where it's just at least that latter half. Maybe not the former half I can only hope for. The latter half, the ones I'm really pushing for. Not the talent, the money.
Right. That would be nice to be able to eat off doing something you love. That would be wonderful. But Shinya Tsukamoto's done a bunch of stuff that's good. You can just go on his IMDb page and look up things that are good. And then there's the third one, and that's Sogo Ishii, but he goes by Gakuryu. So I'll just post that in the chat here. But I just searched up Sogo Ishii. Sogo Ishii. That's his original name. He changed it.
I'm actually studying Japanese right now, and I actually wrote his name right the first time.
There you go. He's got a few good movies, not necessarily anything to do with horror other than maybe Angel Dust. But he's a very influential Japanese director who did a lot of interesting things. I would suggest Burst City. It's kind of like Mad Max and Japanese punk mixed together. He did a lot of biker movies, basically. So there's that.
Sounds like
he's one of the influences on Akira, more than likely, as well as Tetsuo the Iron Man. It's the other movie I mentioned. It's very much a side piece to Akira. It looks a lot like it.
Interesting.
There's always in Japan. What I found in exploring Japanese stuff is that there's always precursors or influences to whatever's going on in manga. Because usually, what manga likes to do is just borrow stuff outright. And just take it and take a spin on it and hope no one notices, I guess. But that's one of the directors that you should look at. From Sogo Ishii, I would suggest you look up Electric Dragon. That's a good one.
I would like. Oh, hold on a second. I actually need to point something out. Phoenix?
Yep.
You may have changed your icon. However, the entire broadcast, I should have mentioned this earlier, you have still been the Rurouni Kenshin image.
I realized that.
Okay,
Why?
I was just making sure. I didn't know if you realized.
I looked. I keep seeing it's down in the right corner. I knew that for this broadcast I was probably going to be. There is an album called Electric Dragon in Covenant, and I kind of want to buy it because it just looks cool. But let's see, Electric Dragon, Dragon City. That's not what I want.
Yeah, it's Electric Dragon, 80,000 volts. It's an interesting movie about two rock and rollers having a duel. It's weird. He's actually got a Lovecraftian film. It's called August in the Water, and it's about these Japanese students at a high school. They discover in their town a stone, and from the stone that spreads a disease that turns people into stone. And it's a very dreamy, atmospheric film, but it's also very Lovecraftian. And if you're into that, I would suggest looking at August in the Water. I don't know if it's more readily available. I actually had to, back in the day when it was not available, I found a copy of it online in torrenting, and I found a VHS copy of it, and it had subs on it, English subtitles, and I translated it from those. Well, I guess I transposed the subtitles by hand over to it and put it out there into the world. So if you've ever seen that off of Cinemageddon or any site like that, that was me doing that. I liked August in the Water. But those are three major directors from Japan that are kind of they do horror, they do weird stuff, they do sci-fi, and they also feel back into that Lovecraftian thing. All three of them. And I would suggest that you should check those out. They're really good, especially Tetsuo the Iron Man. That's just it's a wonderful movie. I think everyone should see that.
Alrighty, I'll add that to my list.
Yeah. And if you want something else, going back to what I mentioned before with the Lovecraft movies, I've got over 253 of them in a folder. I mentioned the Stone Tape, and that's actually by a British writer who wrote it. His name's Nigel Neal. He did a series of they made TV shows, and then the series were turned into movies by Hammer Studios, who were famous for their horror stuff. But his name's Nigel Neal. That's Kneale. He did a series called Quatermass. And Quatermass is about a scientist that has to deal with eventually, over these 3 or 4 series, the end of the world and the passing on of mankind as an alien presence takes over. It's very good stuff. I would suggest you watch the Hammer movies. They're much easier to get into, and they summarize the series pretty well. But a fun fact is John Carpenter liked Nigel Neal's work so much, he actually went by the pseudonym Quatermass in his earlier career.
What was that? What was sorry? I'm distracted by a number of things. The actual
that's okay.
itself. What was the one you suggested?
It's called Quatermass. It's Quatermass. Quatermass. It's Lovecraftian, very disturbing, and he also did the Stone Tape, which is another Lovecraftian movie I suggested. But those are just things that people can get into that are very easy to get into, but they leave a great impression.
Interesting.
The Quatermass.
There was a remake in 2005.
Yeah, there was a remake.
Was it any good?
I don't remember watching it. I know that the original stuff's so good, you probably don't even have to watch the remake.
Okay, so when I look up Quatermass, I'm seeing British TV series. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's the Quatermass TV series, and actually the first series was broadcast on BBC very, very early in its existence, and they lost most of it. So the movie Quatermass by Hammer Studios is actually you should watch that instead. And there's a few sequels.
There's Quatermass Experiment,
yeah.
Quatermass 2, and Quatermass The Pit. And
then there's Quatermass 4, which is a TV miniseries, and it was in 1979. That didn't have a movie made, but it's also kind of the conclusion to it.
I feel like this is sort of a predecessor to the frickin' Doctor Who because of all the different actors that have played Quatermass. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think there's an in-universe explanation for that. But actually, speaking of Doctor Who has some interesting horror elements in it occasionally.
Yeah, it
especially
does.
With the angels, and we're nearing the hour and a half mark here, and Aydin isn't back in. I'm concerned about that. Any word back from her? Anyone?
I've not done anything. I tried Twitter, tried Discord.
I've got her on Facebook and nothing.
Seems
I have her phone number. I can call her later on.
Don't. I mean, if it's something really important, then let's let her take her time. Yeah. If she contacts us, I just wanted to tell her before she left that her freaking avatar there looks like a centaur.
It does, doesn't it?
Like slightly. It's just because her avatar's legs are infused with the
Yeah.
whatever she's sitting on a little bit. Yeah, I get you.
That, and I've been reading a lot of Monster Musume fan fiction. Now that I get
For some reason, I want to think that she just kind of passed out on us.
Oh wow.
But like
that.
well, last time she kind of did. What happened is but we specifically started earlier tonight to avoid
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Intro.
But
I
think-
hate to be a buzzkill, but I actually have to drop out too because it's 11 and my girlfriend's gonna kill me if I don't get in bed.
oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fine then.
Yeah.
All right.
I enjoyed talking, and I hope I contributed back some things. I'm better at just giving out things for people to watch than I guess.
Oh yeah, no, this was very informative.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is very me personally. I mean, like, because I feel like in this circumstance, you know how they say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Completely outshined here. Like, you seem to have a real mastery, a real knowledge of Japanese horror, and Aiden definitely had some real fucking powerhouse with her actual like
Yes.
book smart knowledge on horror.
Academics. Yeah.
I'm just saying here, I'm a guy that likes playing horror video games, and very rarely,
Yeah.
it's like I like studying them. I don't like actually like playing them because I get scared. I mean, like,
Yeah, I enjoyed talking to you guys. You should have me back on sometime if you ever want to talk about. I do everything. So.
oh yeah, I will poke Tef in the side to invite you back. We can always have a horror part 2 at some point, especially since it seems like there are 2 horror experts need to eject out of this.
Well, what we should do is I should give you that list of things to watch, and then you should come back with your impressions on it.
I will. I'll look at some of those things, or at least I'll try to if I have the time, because life, busy, all that.
Yeah.
Before you go, what was it? If you like horror, give me your thoughts on Black Book, which is a series that I'm making of my own, and I have 3 episodes of it up right now on my YouTube channel. So if I can grab a link for you right now, I would love your impression of it.
Sure. You'll give me some chance to synthesize it and take it in, and then I'll give you my feedback.
Yeah.
No problem.
Technically, it starts with White Book, which is there are 4 episodes up, but one of which is the prequel thing.
Bree, also, I'm putting a link in the group chat. It's for the it's for the Discord channel. Go ahead, drop in, and then you can give me details to link to your crap for the video.
Sure thing. I'll do that.
Alrighty.
All right. I'll do that on Sunday. I'm a little busy tomorrow, but I guess I'll see you then.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been real.
It's been real too. See ya.
Later.
See you later, man. So we could have a 2-way conversation for a bit here. It like what happened last time. Same thing. Kind of like Aiden disappeared at the end, and me and John Smith we continued to talk for a little bit afterwards. Until, because I actually think that 2 hours is actually a good mark for the podcast, but I don't mind ending it early if there's nothing to talk about.
I mean, I'm not really sure where we should go from here, considering we had like the different talking points.
Yeah. Well, what scares you? I'm kind of curious because I'm curious because I put my deepest fear of actual loneliness out there. But what about you? I'm kind of curious. What's your existential crisis horror?
Powerlessness, being able to do nothing. I mean that is like when you get down to it, that's just how I operate. Is my entire mentality is, hi Brean, you back? Hi. I guess I don't know. He's just chilling there.
He might be grabbing the link.
Okay. The that's
Oh yeah, he's asking for the Discord link. Let me grab a new one. I'll grab a permanent one. Just so it don't throw this around, but here's the permanent link. All right.
But okay, so yeah, powerlessness. That is for me the ultimate, and that's one reason I prefer games over movies, and why I
Right.
prefer games where I can fight over movies is that it gives me a fighting chance, and for me that puts me. If you want me to stop doing something immediately, make me feel like I'm useless doing it.
Yeah.
If you want me to lose interest in it immediately, not even like be scared of it, just lose interest. But like, if you put me in a situation where I have no power, it's why I also hate like haunted houses. I can't go in haunted houses, not
Right.
because I can't do something. It's because if I do something, I'm going to get arrested. And I will punch the fuck out of people. And I've talked to people who actually work in haunted houses. I have friends in there, and they have shaken my hand and thanking me for being like, you have no idea how many people go in there knowing they're probably going to end up punching someone.
Boy.
And so they're thankful that at least some people have common sense and are like, if you think you're going to end up punching one of the performers, don't go in there. And so I don't. I when I get scared, my immediate reaction is to fight back, even if it's fucking Slender Man and he's going to wrap one tentacle around me and pin me to a tree. I want to at least try and grab the tentacle and do something with it.
Yeah.
Hell, maybe I can get my handy and he'll let me go.
Yeah. See, because so like haunted houses like that. I've been in haunted houses before, and I'll have one of two reactions in haunted houses, right? Reaction one is I squeak or I scream, and then I continue to move. Reaction two is I have no reaction. Sometimes I'll go into haunted houses and I just kind of I go with it, but it's kind of like, this isn't scary at all. Ooh, loud noise. I have two reactions basically in haunted houses like that. It's because I know nothing. Either it's a jump scare situation and it just kind of startled me, or I know nothing can hurt me and it doesn't scare me.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know. I can't get past that. Like, I constantly have this kind of paranoid shield up. It's one reason that I can't like.
Yeah.
I like hugs, but I don't feel comfortable getting them or giving them.
Right.
But I'm just like, I'm constantly paranoid, and I don't need that extra stress on top of it. I don't need that extra weight on top of me. And so when I'm playing a game, I like having the option to fight back, even if it's not a good option. In real life, because in real life, I always have the option to fight back unless I'm bound and gagged. And in which case, I actually would just be like, all right, fine. Okay. I mean, if I can't do anything, I might as well just be like, fuck it. I'm already going to die. Might as well just accept it. I'm not going to be scared of that.
Yeah. But it kind of, yeah. So I do kind of really think that because horror isn't. If you go into a horror game and you can't fight back, well, that's not really horror. It's kind of like you have one option is run away, and that builds tension, but it's not really horrifying. It's not. Oh God! It's not. Oh God! What's happening? You know what's happening. Something is chasing you, and you have to run away. In those kinds of games like Amnesia and not in Amnesia, unless like not so much in Amnesia because the things are truly terrifying, but more in which was the I forgot the name of it, the other one that followed Amnesia in the asylum.
Outlast.
Yeah, Outlast. In Outlast, it's a bit more in this shit. I lost my train of thought again. Fucking right. Outlast is more Outlast is less like in theory. Outlast is less scary, to be honest, because there's always an air of mystery around the monsters of Amnesia, because we don't really know exactly what they are. And even when we know what they are, it doesn't take away from how horrifying they are. And the one enemy that will never stop being terrifying is the crank, the kank. Do you remember the fucking water monster that's invisible?
Oh yes, yes.
Oh god, those will never stop being terrifying because again, you can never see them, even if you understand what it is. But these games are I feel like games where you don't have the option to fight back are just a little less terrifying simply because you can only run away and you know that's your only option, and you know what's and in Outlast it's less scary because you know they're just humans that are fucking insane or whatever. Kind of.
Yeah, humans are quantifiable.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, that also means you can like. I would argue there are two types of horror in. I guess we've been arguing about different types of horror. There's a potential for two types of horror: of mysterious horror, where you're not sure, horror, which is also kind of tied in with mysterious. The idea of knowing the potential of something,
right?
Like, you know, the potential for one of those inmates is to put you on a table and have them saw your groin off, which almost happens in the DLC. Right. That's fucking scary. That is legitimately fucking scary because it's a tangible, immediate threat.
Yeah.
But it doesn't leave a lasting impression because that is all based entirely upon adrenaline and not upon any type of deeper thought. It's all about, I know what the immediate threat is. I know how fucking terrifying it is to face it. I have to be able to resist it in some way. And Spike is for. It's my fight or flight situation. When it comes to real horror, it goes beyond that, where it's you can't run, escape. There is no escaping real horror.
Right.
Real horror is something that just traps you and encloses you and squeezes until you just can't bear it and you're shut down.
Right, but if you overexpose and and the best and worst part about horror games that if you overexpose a player to that kind of horror, they will desensitize.
Yes, I mean that's a risk of anything, to be honest.
And here's the thing about Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 is they both had the potential to be scary. actually scary, actually horrifying because of certain enemies. Resident Evil 5, the demo was still hideously terrifying. It's just that once you get into the actual game and you have a lot of guns and weapons you can use, things start to get less terrifying. It was the whole aspect of that second, like even the first playthrough of Resident Evil 5 lost the horror in the same places that the demo had it because, well, actually, no, the first encounter with the Executioner is still absolutely terrifying. It's just once you get up to that other second demo area in the real game.
I would argue that it's not necessarily terrifying. Like, it was tense. I'm not going to deny that the fight with the first Executioner was tense. It was. But the problem is it's a lot of Resident Evil 5 had already been done with Resident Evil 4. So by the time we reached that, we had the Chainsaw Man, which was infinitely more simple, much more relatable, but also at the same time much more mysterious. And
also still terrifying.
It's also still terrifying. Like somehow that withstood the test of time, but the Executioner is not really that scary because he's so cartoonish. Like the man with a chainsaw and a burlap sack over his head. It's a little ridiculous, but someone could easily do that, and these are crazy people.
Right.
That worked. But an Executioner is a fucking giant fat man with an axe the size of my fucking body. Right. That's not realistic. That doesn't have any grounding to it. And that's the thing you need at the beginning of any horror game is a form of grounding. You always need some kind of grounding element. Every Resident Evil game, zombies and just zombies. And then you introduce things like zombie dogs. Then
and liquors and
Then you introduce the liquors. Then you introduce all the different types of monsters, but you ease them into the surreality. In Resident Evil 5, it's like, oh, here are some guys that are throwing axes at you. Boom! Giant axe man.
Well, and I mean, yeah, but I think that the thing is they with the Resident Evil franchise, they don't look at each individual game, and that's not a problem. What they do is with Resident Evil, it's always been about the franchise as a whole. And someone who comes in directly on Resident Evil 5, their suspension of disbelief is probably not there because they don't know about the rest of the series, or maybe they don't really care about the rest of the series. But when you look at Resident Evil 5, the developers came from a standpoint of, well, everyone's played Resident Evils 1 through 4, and they've probably played some of the spin-offs. They know that things can get a little bit crazy. So why don't we first off, we're gonna go full on with our intended Hollywood themes, because they've always had these tense Hollywood moments in every game. And let's because we're going for that Hollywood theme, let's ramp it up to 11 at the beginning and push it further as we go along. That was kind of like the premise.
But the thing is, that wasn't
horrifying.
That wasn't at all how it started. Actually, I think you're observing something that didn't happen, because I actually have a document that goes over the history of the development of Resident Evil 5.
Well, I know that the producers or something along the lines in the beginning said, "Hey, let's go Hollywood."
No. Their key inspiration was Black Hawk Down, which I don't think was a bad idea, but I think they lost their way along the way, and I think part of it was them getting the idea that a co-op partner was a good idea. I always go back to that as what killed a lot of the horror in that game. But I think from there, it became a little too video game. I think that it is where it stems that suddenly you feel like you have to accommodate having this partner. You always have to accommodate taking care of the partner, and you have to accommodate the challenge that comes with challenging a player that now has a second gun, effectively, and a second intelligence. So it became more about streamlining the situation than it did about creating the horror. It became too much about the gameplay itself and not enough about the experience behind it. Akin to playing a tabletop role-playing game and focusing too much on the mechanics of the game versus not enough of the role-play.
Right.
Oh,
Aiden.
Aiden, are you here?
Hey, what's up? Yeah.
What
happened?
Where are you? We've had the fill dead air.
Okay. Now I'm fucking tired. I'm tired as fuck though, dude. Oh my god.
Oh shit. Are you
asleep?
Aiden?
Yeah, I'm on.
So we started early, and it didn't help much.
No, oh my god, I'm so tired now. Holy shit.
Oh boy.
Well, at least you came in towards the end of this. You missed an entire conversation.
Yeah, I probably did.
Like you dropped off, I want to say around 10 o'clock, something like that. Maybe a little later, 10:15, something like that. We actually have the time code, probably. I mean, Tef can tell us.
Maybe. But, I don't know the exact time. Shit. Well, that.
Yeah, you've been out for like an hour.
Or at least 45 minutes, maybe.
Between that, yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, dude.
Aside from being tired.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to jump out? I mean, like it would be perfectly. I mean, if you feel like you need to jump out, go ahead. I mean.
No, I'm cool. I'll probably just go get some seltzer though. So I'll be back in a minute.
Well, before you go, I just want to tell you, your image looks like a centaur.
Cool.
Okay, good.
Oh, here you go. Hang on.
All right, see you in a minute. Okay.
Where were we with Resident Evil 5? Eternal debate.
I get. Okay, so you were saying about they focus too much on the gameplay, but I mean, that would have only been that wouldn't have necessarily been a problem if they introduced if they had themed it correctly, like if they had themed more of it correct, because again, what they did is they went. I'm going to reference back again. They've always had this Hollywood air about Resident Evil, and Resident Evil 5, yeah, they may have focused a lot on the gameplay, but what ended up happening is they went full-fledged Hollywood vibe with Resident Evil 5. They kind of they wanted it to play out like a movie, and that was the inherent mistake. If they had made it play out like a movie less and done a little less over the top, what they ended up having, they had all of the visceral horror that they needed. They had the themes that they needed. They had all of the science fiction that they've always gone for. It's just that
I would actually argue they had less of that because of the lesson focus on
because you're hung up on Ouroboros.
It doesn't make any sense. It has no rules.
That's the point, and it's supposed to be like it kind of is supposed to be like the most Ouroboros is supposed to kind of be the most I feel like it's the most Lovecraftian fucking element of Resident Evil horror, simply because it doesn't have any rules and no one understands it.
You don't understand though. There's a difference between what Resident Evil did and Lovecraftian horror.
Well, yes, I understand. No, I completely understand, but it in theme and in appearance and in the way it acts, Ouroboros ends up being the most Lovecraftian element because nobody understands it.
No. You're getting it wrong, because this is the thing that differentiates good understanding of Lovecraftian rules.
Well, I'm not saying I have good understanding of Lovecraftian rules. I'm just saying it appeals to a few of the most Lovecraftian elements.
It appears just like all the people using tentacle imagery. It appeals to the baseline. It doesn't appeal to the core.
Right.
Or it appeals to the surface. The brilliance behind Lovecraftian horror is that there is an order behind whatever is going on.
Right.
That's the horror, is that you just cannot comprehend it. But
I think that there
is that there is no order, and I think it as much. There is no order behind it, and you can sense that. A good writer and creator knows how to instill that sense of knowledge, that sense of I don't know what these rules are, but it feels like there is something there guiding this thing to behave this way.
Well, sure. I don't think that the Ouroboros virus is necessarily unguided at all, because we at least know it is based off of the genetics of whoever it's injected into. But and it does have a set of consistent themes that the Ouroboros virus follows. It always like when it rejects a certain when it rejects genetics, it will generally turn into this kind of black sludge with sludge tentacles of some sort, and that's consistent. We just don't know what genetics it selects.
This is the worst topic to talk about, because you and I just do not see eye to eye at all on this damn game. For those of you just tuning in, me and Tev have gone back. Did you ever put up that gameplay footage of us with what's her face?
I think I had it, but I didn't end up putting it up because I didn't put it up because my microphone didn't actually work for the first fucking few episodes. None of my dialogue came through.
Well, how self-centered of you.
Well, it would have.
I'm kidding. But no, like, for those of you who don't know, me and Tef have gone back and forth on Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, and we have had a constant war about whether or not either one is worthy of the mantle of Resident Evil and all that stuff. He thinks it does. I don't think so, but
I just think it's Resident Evil in a different way than you think it's Resident Evil.
I have a very, very specific guideline for what makes Resident Evil Resident Evil. and it encompasses only the good games.
Well, Resident Evil 7 certainly wasn't Resident Evil because they started bringing in fucking hallucinations and psychological crap. I mean,
actually, no, it is. Especially if you know.
No, it goes completely
Resident...
paranormal.
No, it doesn't. Have you actually watched the gameplay footage? Have you?
Yeah, I have.
It hallucinogenics are known in nature, and the fact that they're combining it with the idea of, and they actually have research notes that do look into this, and that's the important key distinction: is this virus, this fungus has rules, and it adheres to those rules, and there are still some outlying questions about those rules that make it even scarier, but they still have people observing them and being like, "Huh, it's behaving in this way. Maybe this, maybe that. Hypothesis here, theory here." It actually has people makes the fungus believable, as opposed to it can magically transform shit.
Oh, but there's just magically this fucking Alessa Gillespie character that everyone sees at the exact same time, and there's no differentiation between certain person's interpretation of her. No, it's just like this fungus automatically makes everyone see this Alessa Gillespie type paranormal ghost figure, period, and it's observable. And
it's a combination between it's a hive mind. That's what the fungus is.
That's totally fucking. That's fun. But
in fact, if you want to go with it, Ouroboros is also a hive mind. It was controlled by Wesker, and then Wesker died.
That's not entirely. That's not true at all.
You want to know why it's not true? Because Ouroboros doesn't have any fucking rules.
Wesker couldn't control Ouroboros at all because even his genetics weren't necessarily accepted by Ouroboros. He wouldn't the only reason he took contact with Ouroboros was because at the end of the game, he knew he was going to fucking, he was in a last fucking fight. So he was just like, fuck it. I'm going to fucking put Ouroboros in myself and hopefully it accepts me. And it only like half accepted him because it still went all black and tentacly and shit. But he was not in control of Ouroboros at all.
Hey, dude, we gotta find a different topic. We're not going to agree.
I think the progenitor virus was what gave him like a little bit of semblance over fucking.
To be fair, I've never been like Wesker as a villain. At least their explanation for him coming back has never sat well with me to begin with, even within the mainline series. So that's kind of a thing with me. So I'm already not liking him as a villain. I can enjoy Resident Evil 5 for as campy as it is. Resident Evil 6, I just don't enjoy Resident Evil 6 because I just feel it doesn't. I can't adequately articulate why I don't like Resident Evil 6, other than it's over the top action, far more than Resident Evil 5 even was.
Well, I don't know, man.
Like I said, we're not going to arrive at a
sounds like a personal issue to me.
And that's the point of these discussions. It is a personal issue, but trying to articulate it in a way that others can understand is key. And I'm failing.
Don't worry. You have the popular opinion.
I mean, the thing is, I've been trying to crystallize that popular opinion because I don't know if the popular opinion quite has it down right.
I mean, man, people are gonna fucking. If anyone who's a Resident Evil fan ever watches this podcast, I will get crucified for saying that I feel like Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 are good Resident Evil games despite not being horror games.
Well, I severely disagree with you. You make good points. I can't deny the fact that it has been edging towards a more action-packed focus. I really disagree with you because I think there is a breaking point. But you make a solid argument. But that's what I can appreciate about it.
Right. It's well, and you know,
don't compare Ouroboros to Lovecraft. That will trigger me. That will trigger the fuck out of me.
I mean, I wasn't saying it's a Lovecraftian virus. I was just saying it holds a lot of Lovecraftian elements to it.
I mean, Code Veronica probably has more.
Maybe.
Especially with Veronica herself, we don't really know what she wanted. Not Veronica, Alexa.
Right.
Like she herself is pretty Lovecraftian in her nature because she's very much a godling. And she also has like control over weird tentacles and weird plant creatures. That's a surreal element of the series.
Yeah. I just feel like Resident Evil 7, like, and the reason, main reason for not liking Resident Evil 7 is the fact that I have such a deep connection with the characters of Resident Evil that pulling away from it, no, dude, no, absolutely not. What we absolutely needed was a game that I think we should have had a game starring Rebecca Chambers. We have not seen a single game starring her since Resident Evil 0, and she needed another game. Huh?
She's in the musical. She stars in the Resident Evil musical, which is canon apparently.
Really?
I'm not fucking joking. There's apparently a Resident Evil musical. I mean, there's been several, but there's one that's apparently canon that came out like a year or two ago.
I hardly consider that to count. We needed another game with Rebecca because she's by far one. Like, they could have done Resident Evil 7 with Rebecca Chambers, or they could have done something, similar with Rebecca Chambers, because she's the least overpowered character in the Resident Evil universe. You've got Chris, who's just fucking buff. You've got Leon, who's got
no. You're forgetting about a huge cast of characters.
The what? Outbreak characters?
Yeah, because was it in Resident Evil 7? Alyssa from Resident Evil Outbreak was referenced like twice. Mm-hmm. She wrote 2 newspaper articles that appeared in Resident Evil 7, which kind of ticks me off because the characters from the side games are getting more attention than a character from the main games. Where the hell is Rebecca?
Right. Give us fucking Rebecca.
Give me that cute little tush. She's adorable.
She is. She really is. But at the same time, I would really encourage exploring a little bit with some of the characters that seem to have infections and are superpowered. I want to see what Moira can do now.
Oh god, no! I'm like Moira. Like that's the one thing that Resident Evil Revelations 2 did so right. It's not Moira. It's Moira is Moira's not infected. It's the other girl.
No, Moira is.
She is?
Yeah, no. Everyone who got those armbands was infected with the T Phobos.
Right, I forgot about.
And hers went red, and she's.
And so did Claire's.
Well, the thing is, with Moira, she got crushed by cement and rebar, and survived. And her thing is red, so we know that the T Phobos virus triggered, but it didn't trigger a mutation. She's just normal.
Who was the little girl? I'm trying to remember her name. Dahlia? No.
Yeah, Dahlia. I think
she scares me.
That's
because Alexia or whatever.
Alex Wesker.
Alex Wesker is inside of her. I'm just like, oh shit, we have another Wesker running around. That ain't good. And I want that plot line delivered on. I want to see. It would be horrible if, like, in the end of one of the games, you have to murder a child because, quite literally, an evil megalomaniac is, like, taking over her mind. Right.
But, inevitably, I just feel like Resident Evil 7 ended up being, like, yeah, okay, it brings back some fucking, it makes people feel scared again because they needed because just like we had this change from the fixed camera angles to over-the-shoulder stuff, it needed a refresh. But I don't like that they tossed most of the characters. I also don't like how Chris looks. Oh, God, he looks fucking... What is that? What even... Oh, discount Chris Redfield.
To be fair, we don't know who this Redfield is. I mean, they do say Chris in the whatchamacallit, but we have no idea what he's been through, who he is now anymore, because he's working for Umbrella. Mm-hmm. It's weird. But like Resident Evil 7 was a return to form when it came to the layout of the mansion, the layout of the plantation, I should say, the function of the enemies, the function of the weapons, the way combat felt and was heavy and sluggish, the way that the virus was presented, less as this action thrill ride and more as this slow, creeping, and inevitable threat. I mean, Ethan is among your list, isn't he? He's infected. They fucking stole his hand. They stapled his hand back.
Right, but we know how that we kind of know how that virus works now.
Well, the question is, does like is there another hive mind? Is there like would it? Oh, did she drop out? Aiden dropped out.
Yeah, she dropped out.
Oh, it's a shame. But the hive minds, like, are there more than one hive mind? Do they connect to one another? Can they cause the same type of hallucinations? Can they have the same influence over people? Will that affect people who are infected with another hive mind's fungus? Those are questions that are lingering in the back of my mind, and those are good questions to have because we have solid rules, some solid rules for which to go off of, which is, again, my problem with Ouroboros. We can go back to that, but it's just the so it also, the thing is, the reason we know the rules of the virus is because we have characters who study the damn virus, the fungus. We have scientist notes, scientist records of looking at, of watching them, of writing down observations, of making pinpoint theories and ideas. We have people asking questions about it. We don't have simply, oh, it does this and this and this. It's a magical super monster. No, we have people basically going back and forth, not sure exactly how this thing operates. And I like that, like not even the smartest people, the people who created it, know what's going on. And I like that.
Would you be satisfied if Capcom released some kind of document on how Ouroboros works?
I might be a little more happy, but the fact is,
but would you be happy now? Like, the mystery is gone. The whole concept of Ouroboros.
I would like to know how you see. I would like maybe 3 more documents related to Ouroboros to be placed into Resident Evil 5 that discuss how it operates under different conditions. I would like people to be like, oh, in cold it operates in this way. In heat, it operates in this way. Observations about, oh, when it's exposed to water, it absorbs it into its cells or something. I don't know. Basically, have people making observations about it. Give us context as to how it behaves in different environments. You don't have to answer every question. You have to give us information with which we can chew on, which I don't feel we have enough of with Ouroboros. All we really have is it's genetically oriented, and it forms black goo.
So there is some explanation for it, apparently. In its original form, it was too deadly to host for any host to support life.
Yeah, I accept. As much as it pains me to say it, I accept the Ouroboros far better than I accept the fucking C virus.
But we have like, C virus actually has observable differences in how it operates.
Yes, but the thing is, it's so sporadic that we have no, like, it formed a giant fucking T-Rex, and then a giant bug monster. There's no consistency. There's
hold on.
no.
I'm actually gonna look up the C virus.
Again, I should know that when I played through Resident Evil 6 like twice, and it's been years. So
let's see.
Combination.
C viruses. Yeah, it's the combination of the T and G viruses, I think. Right?
But they already have that.
No, it's the combination of the T, the G, and parasite strains.
Parasite strains.
Yeah, hold on.
That's incredibly weak.
let's see. At this, the infection methods of the virus are mostly unknown. However, two forms of primary infection are known. Direct injection into the bloodstream is the first, the result of which is becoming an infectee joavo. This takes effect immediately. However, it seems that by using a more advanced strain, subjects infected can immediately enter a chrysalid state. So there's actually different. All right, so it looks like there are different. Oops. Intensities of the virus, and a more advanced strain is what gets you the chrysalids, erupting into complete mutations, like when Carla Radams uses the needle bomb to inject BSAA operatives. Infection that mutates into zombies is through the gas distribution. Lapotica is replicates C virus infection through a gas, but how does gas kills any who inhale it and later reanimates the corpses. So it seems like it's just the most versatile virus.
Okay, it just occurred to me that I do have another issue with both it and the Ouroboros virus, which I think might be the key selling point of my issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does. You're making some good points. Like it's less that they're written down notes and more observed facts, because you're right.
They're letting us, the players, do a lot of the science now. Is kind of like they don't want to. I think Capcom has observed that the gaming industry is generally not in favor of just fucking of games spewing. What's the word?
Documents.
No, not document. Like, yeah, documents, but also exposition at the player, and so they want to leave a lot of the observational science to us.
But Resident Evil 7 did that with a lot of documents. It has plenty of documents in there, and
right,
it was universally praised.
Yeah, I think that like Resident Evil 5 and 6 were where they started, because 5 and 6 in the gaming sphere that these games were released in, this was when people were outwardly starting to become excessively upset with exposition. This is when things got really heavy right then. So they kind of reeled back the exposition in documents and and in voice lines, because they knew gamers were very upset with exposition. But what happened is those games got panned by by classic Resident Evil fans who loved exposition after exposition after exposition. And so with 7, they returned to the document exposition format.
But okay, so my key issue with and I even have with Resident Evil 7 some issue with it, but not maybe to the same extent, because the more obscene versions come much later in the game. But the C virus and Ouroboros especially have a problem with conservation of mass.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that Resident Evil, even though you might not realize it, has been very healthy about with how certain things work. I mean, it does push the limits. Obviously,
the G virus has never been good with conservation of mass.
True, but the fact of the matter is that, like, you can kind of get the implication that this is some kind of horrible reversal of it. That it's sort of like the G virus is of sorts, and it's just rapidly. What
is a what of sorts? You cut out there.
A carcinogen.
Right.
And so it's like rapidly, just basically I mean, we've seen it. It devolves the body into a massive flab of flesh. It makes it move sluggish. It basically turns you useless in the end, and that's a horrifying prospect. The idea, like I've always gotten the implication that these monsters were going to run out of fuel eventually. Even the G virus, I think that eventually it was going to run out of fuel if it didn't have enough sustenance to sustain itself on. So I kind of got the implication that maybe off screen, Willie was eating a few bodies or something like that. I could easily see that. Or maybe he was getting sustenance from the blood that was being on. I'm not sure.
Right. I feel like that's kind of always been a little bit of the case. The zombies themselves also, would have burned out eventually. This is kind of
that's the thing. That's the thing I actually liked is that the zombies eventually transform into lickers.
yeah.
There's a natural evolution there, and even though we don't know, we've only really seen lickers in their like base stages, their early stages, maybe in their like kind of matured stages, but we never see them like dying off. They sustain themselves long enough, but we do observe them eating things, so they at least have some kind of digestion going on for them. But Ouroboros and the C virus, especially injected forms of the C virus, seem to have. I mean, Ouroboros goes into creating gigantic monstrosities out of single people.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, sorry. Ouroboros doesn't necessarily have that issue. The only time I can really think of it was Isabella.
What we've observed with Ouroboros, we've actually observed when it gets huge, that's because there's been a mass of bodies nearby for it to absorb. Excella Gion, for example, she turned into that massive thing because the pile of bodies. The first one that we encounter with the Bravo team or whatever, I don't remember what they were called. That's because it's been hunting down and consuming bodies. I can't think of any one body or any one instance in which the Ouroboros virus just kind of the one time is with that body that Excella with the one that looks like, at first, it looks like the Ouroboros has accepted this guy's genetic strain, and then he starts coming at us, and then it turns into the big thing. That is the only time I've seen Ouroboros.
That is one of the bosses where I just had the most issue believing it.
Right.
I also was kind of pissed that they just recycled the boss fight, but
so that was like the one time I've seen a problem with conservation of mass, but I think that had a lot to do with less to do with Ouroboros and more to do with developer laziness, to be honest.
But that still hurts the game overall.
A little bit.
C virus is the one that I'm thinking of the most, because that is the one where Simmons goes from being a average human male into being a fucking Tyrannosaurus Rex of destruction, then to being a skyscraper-sized bug monster. How? How? Like, the escalation there is fucking stupid.
Okay, yeah. First off, the escalation from him into like the wolf thing and then the Tyrannosaurus thing, completely unjustified because there weren't any bodies nearby for him to absorb. However, we did see when he turned into the fly, he was absorbing bodies. That was how he was growing there.
That just pisses me off.
I do get that, but I do honestly think that the first two transformations from the wolf-like thing, or the quadruped into the Tyrannosaurus-like looking thing, I think that was the G virus kind of aspect at work.
Yeah, it's just like the thing is, I kind of get the feel that there wasn't the same reverence for the virus or the pathogen in 5 and 6 that there was in the earlier games.
They definitely went more for science fiction. They were definitely they were asking more of their audience for suspension of disbelief than they ever had before.
I think they pushed it too far. I think that's
just a little bit.
Where like with Resident Evil, with the original ones, they were quiet, slow, and you got a real sense for the passage of time, where things could easily have happened off screen that you weren't privy for. Admittedly, if you were a speedrunner, you could get through the game in an hour or less, like 10 minutes if you're like really fucking good, because some speedrunners are just nuts. But if you're playing as a standard player and someone who's just there to enjoy the story, someone there to enjoy the atmosphere and the setup, you get the sense that several hours pass in these games, several events are taking place otherwheres that you're not aware of, and so several different things could happen. So when William Birkin goes off screen, you have no idea what the fuck he's doing. Then he comes back and he mutates more. So we have no idea what happens in the interim. Anything could have. He could have eaten a body. Instead, in Resident Evil 5, you have flat out someone gets injected with Ouroboros, transforms right in front of you, And whether or not that was creator laziness, it doesn't matter. It damages suspension of disbelief.
Right. That makes me think. What's his name? The fucking the crazy guy from the boat.
In Resident Evil 5?
Yeah, I forgot his name. I don't think,
Irving?
Yeah, Irving. Ricardo Irving. I don't think what he took was the Ouroboros virus.
Oh, it was. It was. I remember this distinctly because I actually looked into it, because apparently there was planned in the scene. You were supposed to observe him absorbing wildlife in order to make himself into the massive fish monster.
Right, but instead
they didn't show it, and it just happens.
Right. Instead, he drops into the water, and when he comes back out, he's the massive fish monster.
Which I think is like again, developer laziness or inability, which I think,
or budget.
If you can't, yeah. Either way, whatever it was, it should have been cut. There should have been, to make a much more manageable monster in this circumstance. Something that we can actually, in some way, explain the appearance and movement of, instead of just giving us man falls in water, comes out big fish.
Well, I see, and because I didn't see the transformation in front of my face, or the bulk of the transformation, I was willing to just kind of, I was willing to rationalize with it, because I don't know what happened in the water. Do you? I don't fucking. It resulted in that. That's all I care about. Shit, fucking shoot it. But I do think, because it didn't look like the other Ouroboros, I think it was one of the imperfect strains that Wesker was working on.
But you see, that'd be interesting information. Why was there no note that was sat down that could have said, well, we saw what happened with Ricardo. That strain is obviously a failure. Let's throw that out.
Well, I mean, because earlier in the game, see, I think Wesker is an asshole. And I think he gave that strain specifically to Ricardo because Ricardo wanted it. What was it? Didn't Ricardo want to live forever? And Wesker is just like, well,
I don't know.
I think that whole issue there was that Wesker was being a fucking asshole and gave him an imperfect strain specifically because fuck you.
We'll never know the answer. I just know that Resident Evil 5 and 6 pissed me off to no end. Oh.
Well, I'm glad we were able to sit down and rationalize it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think
I'm glad I stumbled upon that conservation of mass, because it really did bring it back to, like, about the suspension of disbelief and how, like, that is really at core the biggest issue, where it's pushing it too far to the realm of unbelievability, but not far enough that it's really scary.
Right.
It's a caricature. That's what it is.
But I think now we've been about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Roughly.
Something like that. I think I'm gonna go ahead. Huh?
You got time to wrap it?
Yeah, it's about time. It's about time to close the podcast. We can continue talking after the podcast. It's just I think I'm gonna call it here, because with the two of us, it's just gonna be a discussion about Resident Evil. So we might as well have that off stream or whatever.
Yeah.
So for anyone who stuck through the entire podcast, who's been here from the beginning, thank you very much. You're wonderful, and I hope you have a fantastic day. You have any signing off statements?
Please check out my channel.
Oh yeah, check out his channel. There's a link in the description below this video /stream.
I would like to thank you for hosting me. I would like to thank Aydin and Brean for coming out and talking with us. I had a blast meeting them. Really a lot of fun.
Of course.
I really look forward to talking with them more in the future at some point. And I want to thank you all for watching. You've been, I'm sure, a lovely audience. And I guess I'll catch you all on the flip side.
Have a fantastic day, everyone. Bye.